It is a great pleasure to be here. Last week I was in New York for the 141st time, and this week I'm in Poland for the first time. So thank you very much to Evention for inviting me here. I realize I'm also not speaking in Polish, so I will try to take my English at normal speeds rather than the speed that I talk to my wife and my cat. If we can get the technology to... Yes. So just a little bit about me. I'm an information scientist. I'm not a data scientist, so I'm going to talk about information. My background is both in intranets and in search. The top shows my areas of interest, and I'm also a visiting professor at the Information School at the University of Sheffield. Now, I have a unique offer for you. I am the only speaker that will give you a lifetime guarantee on my presentation. Because what that means is at any time in the future, you can send me an email and say, Martin, I didn't quite understand what you were saying at that point, or I can't find that reference. I guarantee to respond to you because I may have given you an incorrect URL or not talked clearly enough. So you have a lifetime guarantee. The only warning is I'm getting older. Don't wait too long to email me. I'm also conscious that I need to get the program sort of back on track. So there's a lot of references in my presentation. You will be able to download it and click on the references. So I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail, but I'm going to try to put an information perspective on what's going on. So these are roughly my agenda items. And a good place to start is an introduction. So what happens if you can't find the information you need? That's what happens. Now, the disaster at Hiroshima was caused by a natural event. The problem with the nuclear power station was that it discovered it wasn't built to the diagrams that they had. Because when you build a nuclear power station, you make it up as you go along. And the reason that they couldn't close it down was because they couldn't find the information about how it was actually constructed as opposed to how it was designed in the first place. It's well worth reading this paper because what it says is if you can't find the information you need, bad things happen. What you don't know can hurt you. Every day people make big decisions. This comes from a very interesting paper by PricewaterhouseCoopers about how big decisions are made. Now, what is interesting is when you talk to decision makers, they have no idea where the information came from on which they are making decisions. Their PA gives them a piece of paper with all the key facts on, and they go into a board meeting and they make a decision. But they don't know where that information came from. Is it the best that the organization has? Is it the latest version that someone can find? So when people make decisions, they have to trust that all the right data and information is on their desk. How do they do that if they don't manage their information? Now, some people talk about information management and some information governance, and I see a slight difference between them. Information management is about managing information within an information life cycle, and I'll come on to that shortly. And information governance is about doing the balance between the information and the technology. And I put a reference at the bottom to someone you might not have heard of, Max Boisseau, because he created a framework for information management about 20 years ago that most people have never heard of. But it differentiates between those four key areas there. How a bureaucracy works, how a market works. And we have to understand how information flows around our organizations. Information management is a huge discipline. And I recommend the report on the right-hand side, a report from the Information Governance Institute, which is a global institute, because it shows the complexity of all the elements of information management. It's a huge understanding that you have to have of what's going on in your company. And these three Polish mathematicians started it all. These are the three brilliant mathematicians who worked out how to decode the Enigma, the German Enigma machine in 1936. And not only the decoding of Enigma, but the way the information was then managed. Because decoding was nothing if you couldn't get that information in context and set out to the armed forces around the world. That was a huge information management operation, probably the biggest we have ever seen. And yet the details of how it was done remained secret until the 1970s. So all those skills created in the 1940s were lost until the 1970s. Of the computers that used in the UK to do the decoding, Winston Churchill arranged for all of them to be smashed up, except for one. And that's why Britain was behind America in building computers. We actually destroyed all the computers that we'd ever built. Very clever. Now, the interesting thing about information is, in your organizations, you will know how many chairs you have. You will know how many hand dryers you have, how many people you have, how much money you have in the bank. None of you know how much information you have. So if you don't know how much you have, how can you manage? If you ask IT, they will tell you you have 22 petabytes of information. No, you have stored 22 megabytes of something, but you don't actually know how much information you have. Information is not seen as an asset of the organization. It doesn't appear in the annual reports. But without it, you can do nothing with the data that you have. I'm not going to show this today, but there's a URL here you have to go away and click when you download it. Because what Autodesk did was they mapped the changes in their organization over a 5-year period. And it shows how new subsidiaries were born, how people changed departments. And it's amazing. The point is, every time you move, information gets lost because you leave it behind on the server you were using and go to a new server. It's a very good illustration why you have to worry about what information is being lost inside your organization. This is an information life cycle. There is also a data life cycle, which is very similar. But unless you manage some information in this way, from create to store, to discover, to use, to share, and crucially to review the information so you can be certain it is still current. How often have you gone to a document and you're not sure if it's the latest version? Because it says version 6.1, but is there a 6.2? You don't know. Because unless you can see all the information, you don't know on what to base your judgment. Here are 3 things you should read. In the top left, Competing with Information, by Professor Don Marchand, who was the world's first professor of information strategy at the IMD Business School in Lausanne. 1999. Most people don't even know the book exists. But it's crucial to understand how information is used to compete in your organization. On the right-hand side, a very short introduction to information. It's only 150 pages long. Read it and you'll realize how complex managing information is. Because information pervades everything we do and are. And at the bottom, in quite small print, there's a reference to an English consultant called Elizabeth Orner, who wrote a book on information policies in 1998. There's a huge amount of work that's been done on how to manage information, and yet in most companies, if you say, who's in charge of your information? They say IT, in which case I say, well, why don't you leave and go to a different company? Because IT are managing the systems, but they're not managing the content quality, the information quality, and I'll come on to that. So in your organizations, how much of our information is structured, data, how much is unstructured, text, video, images, social media? And what you see here is that in this survey is that something like almost half the companies had more than half their information was unstructured. So even if you have incredibly good solutions to data, you've still not managed to solve your total problem of blending data and information together. And what is interesting, and this is a survey that comes from AIM, which is the American Association for Image and Information Management, and you'll see the URL on a subsequent slide, is that people are actually now beginning to realize that search is absolutely crucial. They are putting more investment into search than analytics. Because the last 5 years, the investment has been in analytics. It has gained a lot of productivity improvements, but they're now beginning to realize that the information needs to be there as well. This is a chart from the Aberdeen Group. And what they're showing here is that the companies who are using unstructured information, that's the text, the images, the videos, are getting much better traction, much better usage of the data. So if you look on the left-hand side, companies who are using unstructured data get better visibility in that data by investing in information. Because you start to put the data in context, and from the information you build knowledge. So information is rather the forgotten partner. A lot of interest in knowledge management, huge amount of interest in data management. In the middle comes information. And the point is that knowledge builds on information. One of the big challenges of knowledge is that we can't write down all we know. So when you try and capture it, you do get some information, but it's only part of the solution. So although we've got data management and information management, we need to bring knowledge with it and have a total solution for our companies. Because from the data you build information, from the information you build knowledge, and from knowledge you decide you need to have more data in a particular area, and so the cycle goes on. I'm fascinated by how difficult it is to find information inside companies. I have a metric for information findability success. I sit down with a senior executive and I say, John, tell me about a report you wrote about 6 years ago. Oh, sorry, 6 months ago. It may have been about a new market opportunity. It might have been an appraisal of a competitor. I say, now, try and find it for me on the search system in your organization. But you cannot use the words in the title, because no one else will know what the title was. And they sit down there and they put some words in, like Poland, market opportunity, competitors. And then they find their report is about number 40 on the list of results. And there are 39 other reports on the same subject. I didn't know all those reports were around. We have no idea who's doing information creation in our organizations. We don't know where they're putting their information. Because information is part of what we do every day. The data is largely collected from externally. We understand what our suppliers are doing, what our customers are doing. But the information is largely internally collected, and we assume when we store it that everyone else can find it. Have we ever checked that they can? Here's this chart again. We can create information and we can store it. If we can't discover it, we have a black hole inside our organizations, because we now cannot use it and we cannot share it, and we've wasted all the investment we made in creating and storing it, because if we can't find it, what's the point of doing it? So the investment in search is absolutely crucial. If you look at this top chart, which comes from FindWise, thank you, FindWise, for sponsoring this event and for actually me being here, because I was discovered at a FindWise conference last year. In your organization, how important is it to improve the ability to find the right information? Look at the size of the very important. It is very important to find that information. And the same with the chart below. This comes from the AIM report. It's incredibly important to find it. But how good are we at doing it? Look at this. How difficult is it to find the information? Look at the left-hand side. Most companies say it's really very difficult indeed, or pretty difficult. This is what I call the information black hole. You know that information is crucial to your business, but most people can't find it. So what's the point of having it? What's the point of being in business? You've got a huge gap between reality and what you really need to do, which is to find the information, to be able to blend it with the data that you have. This comes from a really interesting report written by that surveyed some 500 companies around the world. It's called Organization in the Digital Age, and the reference is just off the screen. You will see it when you download it. How easy is it for your customer-facing people to find the information they need, provide rapid service, collaborate with their customers, and have a smooth and efficient work service? Right? Look at the left-hand end. About 3% of companies were able to say it was very easy to find information and support their customer-facing people. This is a survey of 500 major companies around the world. This is a truly appalling statistic, because customers make paydays possible, but we don't seem to have the information to really support what they want. And one of the problems is the quality of the content that we have. In the UK, we have an Office of Communications. The Office of Communications is an independent body that makes sure that television programs are of the right quality, that telephone systems are of the right quality. It's all about quality. I want you to look at the titles, and this is from their website, the titles of a search I did, and this is just the first page. Microsoft PowerPoint, Master Copy, CER 2013 Charts. That's a great title. And then 97. Wow, I've been looking for 97 all day long, and now I found it. Research. Oh, that's right, I was looking for research, wasn't I? And what about title of document Arial 36-point purple? Now, this is the website of the organisation in the UK that's responsible for the quality of our media. What? Never come to the UK, because think what our media must be like if that's the quality that's on the organisation. Now, interestingly, how did it get to that state? And why does the organisation allow it to be in that state? Because believe you me, the entire website is at that standard. Is that no one is caring about the quality of the information. Have you checked? How many of you have done a search on your website to check the quality of the information available when you do a search? Right, so one, great. What about the rest of you? Because your customers are doing a search on your website, and if they can't find quality information, why should they do business with you? Most people do not have content or information policies. They don't offer any guidance on what is good quality information. So what you see here, the majority of people, only very few have content quality policies embedded in the way they work. Just write it. Doesn't matter if it's too long, too short, poor title. Is that the way we really want to handle information? This quite complicated chart says there are lots of ways that you have to manage quality of information. Adding metadata, really understanding how to create that content on which other people will make a decision. And the point is, in an organization, no one is paid to create content. They do it as a hobby. At the end of the day, oh, I'll write up a memo on that. I'm working for two of the world's largest law firms There is no time code for people to say, I'm going to spend an hour writing that report well. They do it around the edges. What a terrible thought. That's how we treat information. But when you actually get in and add a taxonomy or metadata or work to a content lifecycle, the red numbers are the percentage improvement you get by having a taxonomy. 260% enhancement of search. Wow. And this really frightens me. This is a chart looks at the maturity of search in organizations. This came from AIM. It's a global study. And 60% of the businesses had no budget for search, skills for search. Basically, they are flying blind. And of course, all of you have invested heavily in search. You've all got people looking at search, haven't you? So that they can find it. I'm not going to do a show of hands. This is a chart you need to look at very carefully. This came out in 2000 from the Meta Group. It's part of the Gartner suite now of programs. But this looks at information management maturity. At the bottom, there is no common information policy. Level 2, you've got some departments, maybe marketing, maybe research. At level 3, you're starting to get some enterprise information management that is driven by IT, which is shorthand for, we've got SharePoint, you'll love it. And then you start to get into level 4, in which enterprise information management is driven by the business. And at the very top, you have a situation where, in fact, someone is taking real responsibility for information. I'm not going to ask you for a show of hands, but where are you on that maturity level? Because unless you are above the dotted line, you are not relating information to the business needs. All you are doing is providing technical solutions and hoping that the business knows how to make the best of them. Luckily, many companies are now beginning to realize that there is importance in doing work on information management. This comes from this information governance report, updating policies and procedures, doing data consolidation. Data is just is one element of information management. It doesn't stand on its own. It's part of a total approach to managing the data and information resources of the organization. So some reflections. The lady in the bottom right-hand corner is my wife. Because I go around the world, and as we go around the world, I take pictures to illustrate my presentations. And she's saying, if he stands here for 1 minute longer taking a picture of this mirror, I will divorce him. But it's such a nice mirror to do the reflections bit. So here are the reflections. Information is a business-critical asset of your organization. And yet I guarantee that very few of you have someone who is in overall charge of information strategy, information quality, information policies, how people are using information to make decisions. And the challenge is getting worse every day because the volume, everyone talks about escalations in volume of data. The escalations in volume of unstructured information is just as great. All the social media, the tweets, the Facebooks, the documents that are being prepared, is growing enormously. And yet no one is managing this. No one's saying, can we actually deliver this to the people who are making decisions? Because if those employees make the wrong decision, it could harm the company, harm their careers. And what happens is they have various ways around it. They'll email someone, I can't find it. Oh, Fred, do you know where it is? And Fred says, oh yes, I've got it, I'll send it to you. But Fred's version is 2 years old. So you make a decision on something that Fred thought was current, but in fact isn't. I'll leave you with this thought. The fire of progress is lit by inspiration, fueled by information, and sustained by hope and hard work. And that comes from Lyndon Johnson, the President of the United States, who actually used it at a very big information congress some 30 years ago now. So this morning, I hope I've given you some information. And when you download it, you'll be able to click on some of those, click on the URLs, look at those reports. But in fact, you have to have the inspiration and you have to put hard work into making effective use of information. I've run out of time, says the red letters down here. But you'll find at the bottom, martin.white@internetfocus.com. I'm around the whole day. Do come and grab me in the corner and talk to me. Send me an email. Remember the lifetime guarantee. It's a privilege to talk to you today, and I look forward to some interesting discussions during the course of it. Thank you very much indeed for your attention.